Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Paul Downs, Jay Goltz, and William Vanderbloemen assess the damage of a stressful year. We start the conversation talking about the impact the year has had on their businesses. Are they worth less today than they were in January? Then we discuss whether the three owners have had enough. Would they be ready to sell their businesses if a generous offer were to come along? That prospect, Jay says, would likely cause him to do some soul-searching, but he imagines he would consider such an offer skeptically. It seems to be a well-accepted fact, he tells us, that people who sell their business, 85-90% of them, end up regretting it. We also discuss, as we head into budget season, whether Paul, Jay, and William are planning to give their employees raises this year. Plus, this week's Morning Report news quiz. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will, if nothing else, let owners know they are not alone in facing these challenges. This week's 21 Hats podcast lineup features Paul Downs, who is founder and CEO of Paul Downs Cabinet Makers, which is based outside of Philadelphia and makes custom conference tables; Jay Goltz, whose companies in Chicago include a picture frame business, artist frame service, and a home furnishing store, Jason Home; and William Vanderbloemen, who is CEO of Vanderbloemen Search Group, a recruiting firm based in Houston that works with churches and other faith-based organizations. This episode is titled, Are You Ready to Sell Your Business? We all know this has been a turbulent year with the pandemic, the economic crisis, the election. It's been a lot of stress on you, on your businesses. I'd like to start today by asking, what impact do you think all of this has had on the value of your businesses? How do you think your valuation, your business valuation today would compare with your valuation in, say, January? Paul, do you want to take a crack at it?
I think you could look at it two ways. One being just a very straight EBITDA calculation based on the profitability of the company this year as opposed to last year, and assuming that for small manufacturing, the value is going to be about 3 times the earnings. Then it went down by about $1 million. And then there's the longer term question, which is doing what I do. Is the market for the product going to be the same as it would have been without COVID? And I think it just remains to be seen. Too complex a set of equations about whether we outlast our competitors as opposed to whether the demand for the product shifts in some way. I couldn't tell you. So I won't answer longer term.
When we first started talking to you in June, you were concerned about whether people were going to keep buying conference tables. You seem a little bit more confident now. Is that right?
Well, we've had about $1 million in sales since that conversation. So some people are buying conference tables.
Good to hear.
The ones who are seem to be as enthusiastic about the concept of meeting as they ever were. And now I have more information, but I don't feel like I have enough to make a solid prediction as to what will happen next.
Jay, how about you? Do you think this year's had an impact on the value of your business?
If I had some metric to do it, I would say because just judging with my bank situation at the moment, they look at retailers like we got leprosy or something. I mean, it's just remarkable. And my business has been fine. The numbers, I'm actually doing just fine now. But if I was to go stick it on the market, I just think that people read all these stories about his retail debt and all that stuff, and it's probably had an effect on things. I'm confident I could get 3 different appraisals and they'd all be different because this is what I've been dealing with since the day I started my business. There's anything. My framing business is 20 times the size of the average frame shop in America. There is no metric for that. The furniture store, a little unique in that I do a lot of web stuff. I don't think there would be any way of coming up with a convincing number that somebody could prove, oh yeah, this is what it's worth in the market, because I'm not sure it's worth anything in the market. I've also concluded I could have a going out of business sale for 6 months and probably raise as much money as I would selling it. So it's convoluted and I don't care.
William, how about you? Do you think this year's had an impact on the value of your business?
Yes and no. I think if I'm an investor looking at us, well, first of all, I'm less inclined to sell the business than ever. because I think that we sort of won the battle of the firstest, if that's a battle, if that makes sense. Within our little vertical of faith-based industry, we were the first executive search firm, and we won the battle of the firstest. And I think that the pandemic, I don't wish business closure on anybody, but it's happening to the few other people that try and do what we do. And now we're going to, I'm hoping and believing, survive the battle of the lastest. And when this is all over, however long that takes, we'll be the only one standing in the middle of a market that's going to have more churn than ever. There's going to be a giant musical chairs game across every industry once this is over, but particularly in our vertical. So if I were inclined to sell right now, I would think I'm an investor that can get something cheaper than I need to pay for it, but it's going to turn into a really good investment within 12 months. But as the guy that owns it, that's just not my play. That probably didn't answer your question. I would say the raw value of the thing, if I were looking to sell, it would have been better to sell in January or February than today. But ask me again in 12 months and it'll be better than ever.
So as a way of kind of assessing the impact this crazy year has had on each of you, I want to ask a slightly different kind of question. If someone were to offer you twice what your business is worth in cash, would you take it? How about you, Paul?
I think the answer is for me, yeah. And the reason would be that twice what my business is worth would be enough for me at my age, which is 58, to sort of coast into retirement early. And if I actually encountered someone who was willing to overpay for my business in cash, I think that's sort of a miracle scenario. So I wouldn't pass it up. The flip side would be, why wouldn't you do that? And if the business wasn't worth enough for me to comfortably walk away and try to find something new, then that would be a different answer. Or if I felt that the primary satisfaction of my life was coming to this particular business and these particular people every day and being boss of my own little kingdom. And then the alternative of that is I sit alone in a room with my millions of dollars, then maybe I wouldn't. But I'm pretty confident that I could find a way to be satisfied and to take my skills to some other situation and help a new group of people. So I probably would take that deal.
Does that have anything to do with the stress of this past year?
No. I think the most surprising thing of 2020 to me has been that considering the arrival of disaster after disaster, I have not personally felt very stressed by it because it's never reached a level that compares to other stressful moments in my business life. And what that, to put it very simply, never came close to running out of cash. And that's pretty much exactly my stress level, how much money I have in the bank.
Jay, how about you? If somebody offered you twice what your business is worth?
For me, and this all very much parallels what Paul just said on many levels. The first question is, do I need the money? Would it change my life any? And the answer is no. I wouldn't have a nicer car. I wouldn't have a nicer house. I wouldn't travel more. It wouldn't affect my life day to day, which gets to the second question of, do I like going to work every day? Absolutely. I talk to them. I have a few friends that have retired now. And when I go out to lunch or dinner with them, I want to poke pencils in my eyes when I hear about, I went to the senior center, and it's like, oh, really? That's great. And then it usually rolls into their prostate. And I have no interest in hanging out with a bunch of guys playing cards or whatever, which I'm not criticizing. I have no interest in doing that. I like going to work every day. Third thing is I think my kids have interest in it. I think I'm flushing that one out. I wouldn't feel great about my employee situation. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it for this reason. I would never criticize somebody for selling their business, but I'd be leaving my employees hanging, which I would rather not if I could. And lastly, there could be a situation where you might have a business that you think, oh, I'm going to get swallowed up by Amazon, or I can't stay competitive. And I don't feel that way at all. I still feel I can be competitive. So for all 5 of those reasons, I have absolutely no interest in selling out. Now, if someone came and offered me some stupid number, like 2-3 times, would I have to do some soul searching? Yeah, but I don't know what I do, but boy, I've gone to seminars and stuff, and this seems to be a well accepted fact that people that sell their business, 80, 85, 90% of them regret it after they sell it. I don't think I would do it, but if somebody offered me a ton of money, that would be quite a dilemma. But that's not going to happen, so I don't have to lose any sleep over it.
William, how about you?
Probably not. First of all, you say twice what it's worth. I mean, what's it worth? What is that number?
Whatever you think it's worth.
Well, then let's make up giant numbers. For me, Lauren, I think I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life, all the way back to 9 years old and being a paper boy that bought out the routes around me so I could redraw the districts. There's a part of me that says it would have to be the right buyer too. I mean, it's my name that's attached to the thing, and my whole reason for doing this company is for a cause, and not that's the primary driver, not giant payday. So a lot of things would have to align. But the flip side is I'm 50, which I hope means I've got a lot of life left, and I'm watching so many entrepreneurs fall prey to the idea of, hey, I caught lightning in a bottle once, I can do it again. So the number, like if the cause were right and I believed in the people and I thought they could secure the work and take care of my staff, I would then also have to have a number that's big enough that I'm not going to have to work again, because I'm not going to fool myself into thinking I can just go start another thing and it'll be another great idea. I've seen too many people believe that and then end up, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for income for the rest of my life?
$12 million, William. Robert Half calls and says, we're looking to expand. We already do this for a living, or some other firm that does what you do. And this is a great niche. We love what you've done. We treat our employees well. We want to give you $12 million.
No, that's easy.
12 million?
20.
Really?
No.
20.
Shoot. I was thinking 2 million.
Wow.
I'd be pretty happy.
Wow. Okay.
William, do you have any? You said it would have to be enough money that you wouldn't have to do anything else. If you didn't have to do anything else, what would you do?
Well, I'd probably start some kind of nonprofit work. I'd probably open some kind of coaching for the people I've placed over the last 12 years. I'm getting old enough now that I've made enough mistakes that I can tell people what not to do. And a lot of the younger guys we placed are looking for a kind of a higher level executive coaching, and they trust me. So I'd probably do something like that. I don't know.
What about start a podcast? Everybody wants to start a podcast. That seems to be the rage these days. Would you think about
I've got a couple of those. So that's, I don't know, Lauren, it wouldn't be sit still. I just want to know that my family, and that's not just Adrian and me, I've got 7 kids. They're going to start having kids. I'd love to be able to, I'm a believer that, if you do really well, you should be able to help care for your children and their children. And I want to be able to do that.
And $12 million isn't enough to do that?
Well, it depends on what care for means.
Yeah.
I mean, I give a lot of money away, Jay.
Yeah. 50 million. 50 million.
Oh, God.
50.
It's not an auction.
Yes, it is. That's kind of the point. It's absolutely an auction. There's a number.
Not right here.
Listen, I'll say this. What's the line? Not everything's on sale, but everything's for sale. I mean, other than my wife and children, there is probably a number where it makes sense. And then I could go do great benevolent work and not charge anybody a nickel and have enough for the family. Yeah, of course there's a number. And I know what that number is. I mean, my financial planner and I are pretty clear on it, but it's probably not right now.
Have any of you ever paid to have a valuation of your business?
I have.
What prompted it? Why did you do it? And how long ago was it?
It was 2 or 3 years ago, and my business at the time had 3 stockholders, my father, my brother, and myself, and I owned about half, and then the other two split the other half. And my father was reaching an age when he was starting to decline. And I was anticipating needing bank loans. And I didn't really want to have him involved in trying to negotiate lines of credit or having to be a co-signer and just doing any kind of paperwork. And so I bought his shares out. And in order to do that, I needed to have some valuation of the business. As it happens, there's a guy in my Vistage group whose business is producing small business valuations for SBA loans. And he had a whole process set up. And I was just like, well, I'll pay you whatever it was, $600, and put me through your process.
Is that all it was, $600?
Yeah, because he's got it very much down to a science. And it was, I was looking for a low number at that point because I'm buying stock as opposed to selling. So, we put the numbers through his formulas, and it came up with a relatively low number because the business wasn't making any money. We'd lost $250,000 in the preceding 2 years, so it wasn't worth much.
How did your brother feel about the whole thing?
Well, I will say that my father and my brother have been the ideal partners for the last 25 years, which is that they're utterly unconcerned with how I run the business. And if I feel like something is a good idea, they're like, go for it. And mostly because neither of them have any reliance on my business to support themselves. And frankly, to them, the amounts of money are pretty much a drop in the bucket. So that's easy. But I wanted to be, that's not everybody's situation, but that's my situation.
No,
so
and just
there you have it.
Just to be clear from what I know, if you go hire an accounting firm or someone to do that, from what I understand, add a zero to that. I think an appraisal done is like $5-10 grand. I don't think that's the typical. I don't think $600 is the typical price. So.
Yeah, it may have been $900, but keeping in mind that this is a guy who does this for banks, and it's like it's not automated, but it's not. Yeah. It's not intense discovery.
I've read a lot of stories. I've probably edited a few stories that suggest that business owners should periodically get a valuation, just the way you get a physical, that it's a good idea to know what your business is worth, even if you have no intention of selling it, in part because it may turn up some issues that you should deal with. It doesn't sound like any of you necessarily have followed that advice. William, have you thought about it at all?
I have a golf buddy who does this for a living, and back, I don't know, when we first looked at buying a couple of other search firms, and we did buy one, we went through the exercise, and he just kind of said, hey, let me just do this for you. So I think Jay's right on the cost, but I got the friends and family discount and didn't have to deal with it. But the valuation, Jay's right, it is with EBITDA. I mean, sometimes it's top line and maybe it's top line times 2. But I think in our industry, it's EBITDA times a multiple. And what changes is what is that multiple? I mean, there were some pretty crazy multiples right before the pandemic going on in the search world, 7, 8, 9x. And, that's not there anymore, but it's just a very cyclical thing.
I've been to enough seminars to know, and I'm ADD. I can barely sit through an hour long. I have to tell you, I went to one. I paid attention for the whole hour because it was interesting. And one of the things that they all say is the bigger your business, the better the multiple. You get to a $10 million, $15, $20 million business, your multiple on the EBIT is going to be greater because there's more potential there. So there is a science to it. And
Jay, what I understand, and again, I'm a recovering preacher, right? I have a religion and philosophy degree and a master of divinity. So what do I know, right? But I also hear it's not just the size of the company, but it's a couple things. One, how much is the company driven by the personalities that are there?
Yeah.
And two, how much is the revenue of the company driven by repeatable technology? And technology multiples go up into the 20s and 30s. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then if it's personality driven, well, you got to have these 4 partners here, it doesn't work. Well, those valuations go way down fast.
And then there's also, do you have 2 big customers that make up 50% of your business that all you have to do is lose the one customer and the thing goes in the toilet. So
our biggest customer is a little less than 1% of our annual revenue.
Yeah.
I would guess that William's business is actually quite well posed for a good multiple, because not only do you have a diverse group of customers, but you also have that very strong plan for how to operate the business when you go, and that succession plan. And I think that people who are looking to buy a business are going to be looking for systems in place so that it will run without the founder.
I will say I have a pretty good friend who does quite a bit of merger and acquisition here in Houston. And I talked to him about this a number of years ago because he was encouraging me to, I said, I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell. I don't want to sell. He said, well, you just need to be ready to sell. I said, what do you mean? He said, you'd be shocked. The overwhelming majority of companies that think they're ready to sell don't have their accounting and their books in order. Make sure you're keeping it. He showed me the standards, but keep your accounting and books in really good shape, because that's where, if you ever get to where you have to sell because of health, or you want to sell, or somebody comes along, you're gonna make yourself much more attractive by having your financials in very, very good shape.
That's interesting, because let me tell you from the front line here, I've been paying to get a review from my accounting firm. My 30-year-old kid started to get a little involved with the finances, and he goes, Dad, you realize that you're paying $25,000 for a review? No, I didn't realize that. So I looked into it, and the bank, I got the bank to back off of that. They don't need it. So I say to my accountant, my accountant of 22 years, why am I paying $25,000 a year for review? Well, it's good if you want to sell your company. Well, I'm not selling my company. It's certainly good for him, though. $25,000 a year.
But wait, that was a review, but not a valuation?
Right. Just a review. They had sent 2 guys in to sit in the office for 4 days doing whatever, and they've never found anything in all the years. Keep in mind, part of this is because I have a CFO. He's a CPA. They've never found anything that needed to be adjusted, but they don't mind charging $25,000 a year extra. And you know what?
So what were they telling you in that review? Were they just telling you everything's okay?
Yeah, looks good. Great. $25,000. You do that for 10 years, you just bought yourself a condo in wherever you want it. I mean, that's a lot of money. So I guess part of my point is it's really good for the professionals to run around telling everyone, oh, it's a good idea to do this. Oh, yeah, do this over here. I have a phrase, commerce over conscience. Sometimes the quote unquote professionals don't mind selling you a couple of extra bells and whistles that maybe you just don't need. So it's food for thought.
But Jay, don't you feel good that you bought your accountant and a condo in wherever he wants?
Yeah, right. That's kind of the point. No, I really don't. That's kind of my point. And he takes me out to the country club once a year for their big event, and that all you can eat. And it's like, I don't need that nonsense. And let me tell you, the interesting part of this, for me at least, having my kid come into the business to look at this, you know what? Good for him. He just saved me $25,000 a year. And he's the one that goes, Dad, you really need to go to the country. That whole old school thinking. And when I hear about golfing buddies, William, to your point, golfing buddies, country clubs, going to the basketball game, this whole world of the professionals taking you out and whining and dining you, what's it costing you? I don't really need to be friends with my accountant. I really don't. I don't need to be friends with my insurance guy. I want to get a good price. I want to be serviced properly. That whole world of getting wined and dined so that you no longer shop around for services is really good for them, frankly.
Well, I'm not a member of a country club.
Not you, but is your accountant or your lawyer a member of a country club? Have you ever been invited to one?
You'd like my accountant. She comes in and talks at me at about 350 words a minute for 20 minutes.
Great. She's in New York? She's in New York?
Philadelphia. But It costs me $2,500 bucks a year. And I have a bookkeeper who does the basic things. And it's very no nonsense. And I don't think she's a member of a country club either. So,
do you feel you have enough eyes on your finances, keeping track of where you stand?
I mean, I have both my eyes on my finances pretty much all hours of all days. So still sign every check, and I know where every penny is, and I project out payments and cash flow and all that. Yeah, I'm not worried about it.
William, do you have a CFO?
No.
You had to think about it.
Well, what's your highest? What's your, well, because it's a title, I'm sure. What's the title of your head accounting person? A controller? I mean, you have a controller.
Director of Finance.
Okay. Which begs the question, and what's the difference between a director of finance and a CFO?
Right.
I mean, which I don't know. I mean, and I have an accounting degree, but they don't teach any of that stuff.
I think the thing that I've missed for a long time that we've got now, titles aside, is the ability to forecast cash. And that's not just a statement of cash or read the P&L, but like we have a pretty lumpy business. I mean, we sell a rather large widget, and we're not selling a bajillion of anything that's $10. And so how do you predict lumpiness? And software has helped a lot, and our director of finance is outstanding. So I don't know what
your director of finance have an accounting background?
Yes.
CPA?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I'm not baiting you. I really don't know this. In your mind, do you have a difference between a director of finance and a CFO? Because I don't.
This is just my perception, but my perception would be a CFO is over an actual finance department, which has many people in it, and we don't have that. And I'm learning, Jay, I learned this the hard way. When we started the company, this is so funny, and there were just 4 of us. We just started handing out titles like, well, I'll be the CEO, and you be the COO, and you be the CFO. That sounds all fun, but then people, the business outgrows their ability, and you've got a problem. And the other thing that my COO has done a good job of bringing to pass at our company in the last 2 years is, don't just hand out high titles. Give people a path of progression so they'll stick around. Yeah,
because when you do the COO and CEO and CFO, you end up with an uh-oh, and we've all had the
it's not just that. It's not just that, Jay, but it's like, if you're a director, well, maybe one day you could be an EVP, and then maybe after that you could move to a C-suite. Like there is a path of career progression in front of our people, not just I get the biggest title because what's the difference?
So here's the dilemma of the week. Inflation, cost of living increases now come out at about 1.4, depending on who you look at. But nobody's at 2 and no one's at 1. Let's just say it's 1.4. You're doing a plan for next year. You're trying to figure out your salaries. You giving all your salaried employees a 1.5% increase, or are you thinking, oh, it's been a brutal year. I think I'm going to go 2%, or oh, it's been a brutal year. I think I'm going to go 1%. I mean, where's anyone's thought on it?
Why are you assuming you're giving anybody an increase at all?
Because I believe you need to with cost of living.
I don't do it that way. I mean, I try to give money when we have money, and the state of the business is independent of the cost of living increase that the government defines. I mean, how real is that anyway?
I mean, it's probably fairly close, meaning if you paid someone $50,000 last year, they're taking a 1.5% hit this year just by doing nothing. Because things cost a little bit more. I mean, things do go up with inflation.
Well, just out of curiosity, if you're buying health insurance for your people and it goes up 12% for you next year, what do you do with that?
That's an excellent point, which is that's why this podcast is so valuable, because you're a real life business owner. That is an excellent point of what I'm dealing with. And as a result, I'm probably going to go to 2% because I'm going to eat a little bit of it, but they're going to eat a lot of it. And a lot of my employees are at the point, like most of them aren't like rolling in dough. They're making their $44,000 a year, and they're going to have a hard time paying their bills. And so the health insurance thing is an issue. So I'm going to give them a little more raise, and I'm probably going to raise my prices a little bit because the health insurance thing's out of control.
Yeah, I mean, to me, a lot of times we end up eating costs that prevent us from just handing out more cash to the employees. And the critical thing is making sure they understand how the business spends money, what it spends money on, what we can control, what we can't, and how that relates to their success. And I spend a ton of time keeping everybody up to date on all of the spending we do. So when something like that happens, I could say, okay, well, that's going to be another $25,000 next year that we got to cover somehow. And I don't see, I'm not sure we're going to get the sales. So what are we going to do about it? And that puts the question of, oh, am I guaranteed a raise? That is a partial answer to that. That if we got nothing better to do with the money, sure, I'm happy to give it to people. But if we're required to spend it on something that's out of everybody's control, then no, it's just not there. You're not guaranteed a raise. If you want to be guaranteed a raise, go work for Jay.
William, have you thought about raises for next year?
We're in the middle of doing budget right now.
And?
So what side of this are you on? My side or Paul's side? Does everyone get a raise? At least bare minimum cost of living raise?
I don't know what the cost of living in Houston looks like because it is geo-specific. It's not just any one spot. Arguably, Houston's a more palatable place to live than Chicagoland economically. You guys have had some issues that drive costs up, at least in the salaries that we've been doing for our comp studies. So I don't know. I'll see what my COO brings, and we'll.
But have you traditionally given a cost of living increase every year?
When there's a cost of living increase.
So you're thinking it's a possibility that Houston did not have a cost of living increase?
We haven't had one in years. It went down last year.
Wow. That's shocking.
And we watch that stuff. We watch this stuff like hawks. Like one of our verticals is compensation studies. So we have real algorithms, real stuff that we use to determine those sort of things. And cost of living in Houston just has not gone up. I don't know what next year's indicators are. I'll review it sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll make a decision. But yeah, if people are incurring more costs just because life costs more, I try and help with that. But I kind of agree with both of you. If I don't have the revenue, then I don't have the revenue.
Lauren, what kind of cost of living increase are you giving yourself this year?
Welcome to the real world, Lauren.
Because I think I speak for all three of us when I say we really think you deserve a raise. You're doing it.
Yeah, I'm doubling my salary.
Excellent. That's what we wanted to hear.
Triple it, probably. And
yeah, I could. Okay, so the main thing I wanted to assess today by asking these questions was to what extent, if any, the three of you were feeling burned out. And happily, none of you are looking for the exit door. And that's after the year we've had, that's a happy thing.
Well, that whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger. There is a certain amount of energy, at least for me, and I think I'm speaking for all three of us. You survive something like this, you feel good about it. Like, hey, I look around at my people like, we're all in it together and we've stuck together and we're getting the jobs done and the customers are happy, and like I'm kind of emboldened more.
Does Jay speak for the three of you? For all of you?
No, I don't think the trouble's really arrived yet. I think it could easily get much, much worse. And as long as I'm not actually under duress, I don't torture myself and pretend that I am. And we're just not, but we could be. I just have no idea where we're going to be 6 months from now.
I'm still in delusion, so I'm going to stay there for the moment.
Yeah, you are.
Ignorance is bliss, and I want to be bliss for a few moments.
It's worked so far this year.
It has worked.
You guys may think you're off the hook and I'm about to let you go, but I got one more thing for you, which is I've prepared a morning report news quiz for you to see if you're paying attention to what's going on out there outside your own businesses. First question. This company kind of beat Amazon to e-commerce. Its website went up in 1996 when Amazon was just a bookstore. By 2000, it had $80 million in revenue. What was the company?
Sky Mall.
That's right, Paul. Question number 2. A recent study found that the 99-cent pricing trick, where you try to make something seem cheaper by ending the price in 99 cents, it's also known as the left digit bias, which I'd never heard before. This study indicated that it works in one particular situation, but not in another. Anybody know what those two situations are?
It doesn't work when you're golfing. You can't scream $3.99. You still have to scream $4. Am I right?
No, you're not. Good, though. It's good.
All right.
Nobody?
I'm just trying to remember. I think it works when you're shopping, and it doesn't work when you're not shopping.
Well, that's sort of it. It works when you are looking at prices side by side. If you're looking at a price independently, without comparison to any other similar products, it doesn't have an impact.
I would argue it's a sophistication thing. When you look at Ralph Lauren's pants, you expect them to be $90, not $89.99. And when you go to Walmart for toothpaste, you expect it to be $2.97. So I think it depends on whether you're in a, discounty kind of product.
Question number 3. According to a recent study, if a restaurant can improve its Yelp review by 1 star, it will boost its revenue. But by what percent?
18%.
Anybody else?
I don't know.
No idea.
That's aggressive, Jay. The right answer is between 5 and 9%, which is significant anyway.
Well, let me tell you, I've thought about it after I blurted it out. I was wrong. That's because some people simply don't look at Yelp. So my guess is it would help people that looked at the Yelp a lot more. But the fact is, a lot of people just don't look at Yelp. So it's not going to have any effect on them. So that's why my number is twice as high.
Question number 4. This week, we highlighted a story about finding a final resting place for inspiration, imagination, and fantasy. What was the story referring to?
Entrepreneurship.
I don't know.
William, you're awful quiet. You haven't been reading the morning report, have you?
I read it, but I'm not recalling that one.
Inspiration, imagination, and fantasy are all Carnival cruise ships, and they are being stripped down off the coast of Turkey and to be sold for scraps.
I was waiting on someone to mention the election somehow with that combination.
Yeah,
I thought we agreed to not talk about the election.
Question number 5 is about the election, but not the presidential election. Lost perhaps in the election day confusion was one bit of news that should be of particular interest to business owners. One city managed to pass the nation's first CEO tax.
San Francisco.
Yeah, I heard that one. I read that.
That's the right answer, which will tax companies that pay their CEOs more than 100 times what their median employees are paid. The question was, what city? You got it. It's San Francisco. Any thoughts on that one, guys?
Yeah, it's also known as the Get the Hell Out of My Town Act.
Once again, my thanks to Paul Downs, Jay Goltz, and William Vanderbloemen. Appreciate your time. Thanks for listening, everybody. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Remember, we started the 21 Hats podcast to help business owners feel a little less isolated, to let them know they aren't the only ones fighting these battles. If you got something out of this conversation, please help us reach more people. Tell a friend, subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at 21_hats. And let me know if you have a question or a comment or a topic you'd like us to cover. My email address is lfeldman@21hats.com. See you next time.